This is a place for authenticity. This is a place for you to be honest. This is a place for you to be unfiltered, raw,
difficult
and real.
conversations about our experiences as members of the Black community, and to normalize, the mental
We may
health
talk
world.
sideways in the barbershop. We talk at the bar, but most times we talking shit and we not talking real, because when I get cats in the office, I'm hearing the shame, the fear, and the dread.
Welcome back to Conversations for the Culture. Today we are going to continue with our healing series, and we're going to be talking about post-traumatic growth today. Tim, what is post-traumatic growth?
We spoke about post-traumatic stress disorder in one of our earlier podcasts. When someone is introduced to maybe psychological injury or some type of deep-seated trauma that you carry for a long time and never processed. What post-traumatic growth is, it shifts the narrative. It's a phenomenon where you shift the narrative away from what happened to me. Instead, it hits me what happened. This is what I went through, the loss, the grief, whatever the traumatic situation was. I stopped focusing so much on what happened to me. Instead, how was I impacted by what happened? And from that, a new perspective emerges, a new perspective emanates from this traumatic situation. And so post-traumatic growth, it's not something that one can immediately get to, but it's definitely a process that you, at some point, you begin to walk out in your life, hopefully, because everybody is unable to get to that.
Let me ask you a question. Is post-traumatic growth the equivalent of being resilient?
No, because when you're resilient, one tends to think that, hey, this is where you bounce back. Okay, well, I may bounce back, but I may bounce back into a bowl of shit. You know what I mean? The situation, I was weak in the first place, or when I bounce back, I'm okay. I may be okay. However, it's something more to that, more than that. It's a deeper meaning of life emerges. So let's just go with an example of mom loses her child, unfortunately, to a drunk driver. Mom is torn apart by it, right? And so mom now takes this agony, this trauma, and begins to lobby Congress for change. And now to this day, we have new laws and things in our federal government that protect, mom against drunk drivers. And so a strength, a voice emanates from this that mom never thought she had. Mom is now all over the country advocating against drunk driving and making change because of it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That resonates. It resonates. So when we have clients that have had these traumatic experiences and they're struggling, and I've done everything that I know to do, but I need to shift, but I don't quite know how to shift. One of the things that I often try to explain to them is our brain has one job, and that's to keep us safe. And when we experience trauma, there is a traumatic response. And a lot of times that can look like defenses, right? Our brain creates these defenses that stand out front and guard it to keep it safe. So, for example, if a woman has experienced sexual assault, her brain may create a defense that is saying, you need to hide. You don't need to go in social settings. You shouldn't dress the way that you're dressing. This was your fault, So because of this trauma, now these defenses are there, and these defenses keep her safe. So she's married to them, so to speak. And then to try to get her to understand, when you survive the trauma, a lot of times it's narrative that we create around the trauma. The I'm worthless. Nobody will ever want me again. This happened because of something I did. It's that narrative that keeps us stuck. It keeps us in this place where even though I am ready to do something different, I don't know how to transition over to the growth side, because these defenses that I created have kept me safe And I don't want, it's like a security blanket. I don't want to get rid of that. I don't want to let that go.
Even with that being said, that's thank you for illuminating that, because people that have been molested, raped, or invaded some type of way of personal space or attack, I become this will never happen to me again. So I become the aggressor. I become the abuser now. And so um, you have to like really, I'm a big proponent of always doing a self inventory. And if you're able to recognize, like, man, I'm constantly focusing on what happened to me, or I see, if you're able to see in other areas of your life, like how this has that's why it's so important to ask, how have I been impacted? Because you'll begin to see, if you ask this one question, how was I impacted? You'll begin to see, I no longer go out after when the sun goes down, or I used to be so carefree. All of these things have been robbed of me. Um, I don't like to be touched. I don't like for men to look at me or stare at me. I don't give any eye contact. If you're able to start responding to this one question, how was I impacted? Then that will give you some lens. Okay, this is something that I could start to work on. But it starts with that one question. If you don't see it, it's going to be hard. But more often than not, I'll say, Vic, that a person that has gone through something, they're aware that when things are off with them. And,
Right.
I'm doing this to protect myself. However, man, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep living like this. So, I'm living in fear. I'm living in a heightened state of anxiety. And we already talked about how anxiety can kill your vibe. So
Absolutely.
what are you willing to do differently? And that's one question. How am I impacted? Starts to shift the narrative, starts to shift and open up a new dynamic, a new perspective.
Wow. Yeah. Very true. Very true. So, Tim, let me play devil's advocate, right? Let's give the people an example. So, I walk
Mhm.
in, I'm dealing with my trauma. You've been working with me for 3 months, and I say to you, I hear everything that you're saying, Tim,
Okay.
but how do I shift? I keep replaying what happened to me in my head, and I know I have all these defenses. I know I have a trauma response, but I don't know how to move from trauma to post-traumatic growth. Help me out. How do I get there?
Great
I
point.
want to go.
So once I asked myself, for the example, I had a client that was recently attacked by someone on her job, customer at her job. And so first couple of months of session, she was in a place where she couldn't get away from what happened and replaying this event, this attack. However, I began to ask her, well, what have you noticed differently about yourself? How you've been responding to other areas of your life? And she started telling me about how she was more aggressive to intervene or respond aggressively, because she felt like she was easily irritated and ready to go to 10. Although she was afraid, she began to respond aggressively in every situation. And
Mm,
so I started to focus on her response. And as we start to look at how she has been responding to her family, to strangers, she began to see a pattern that had emerged from
right.
post attack, right? And so now I start asking her, okay, so how do you, let's focus on like how you were impacted by this. And so now I'll never be the victim again. However, I know this is not me and I don't want to live this way. And so now we have a starting point. That's the like aha moment of, oh, wow, I do see how I have been impacted in this way. And it's, although I'm afraid, I've now become the aggressor. So what can I do? What can you help me? What can you introduce to me to help me shift into that direction of letting that go? And so now we start to shift away from what happened. It's playing out every day, all day. It's not on a repeat as much as I'm more aware of when I respond to somebody.
Mm,
Am I being aggressive? What is my tone like? Because now she's hypersensitive to like, I know I got a slick mouth, and now she can even catch herself and see it when She's roasting somebody. She's going off on her family, being short with her kids. She sees it and she's like, I apologize. Mama is going through something. I'm still in that place. And that's the other part of it. Once you know that this is a process, you go give yourself some grace and um, some forgiveness, some grace, some mercy to get through this process because it doesn't just happen overnight.
Oh
Again,
my gosh, Tim,
it
you just
doesn't happen
said
overnight. It don't happen overnight, and you'll beat yourself up for I'm still snapping on people. Well, you just went through something traumatic,
mm-hmm. Yes,
and that trauma may have happened umpteen years ago. But if you never begin to process it, you
right.
still in that same space.
Absolutely. If the trauma happened at 5
Yeah,
and you never talked about it and you 45 and we're
yeah,
just now talking about, guess what? You're still, a part of you is still stuck in that place when that trauma
yep,
happened.
yep, exactly.
Tim, you brought up forgiveness. And so I just want to throw this out here. For me, I struggled with forgiveness for many, many years. And it wasn't until I realized that forgiveness was for me and that forgiveness does not mean or equate to reconciliation
Mhm.
that I was able to forgive. When I realized, oh, I can forgive you and not deal with you, I was like, oh, I can forgive, right? So that
Yeah,
concept that was once foreign is now something that I can embrace, right? And
exactly.
so I think with trauma, understanding that when you are being insightful and tuning inward and addressing your trauma, the defenses that were created, these are not things that you have to be married to. You can work through this trauma and slowly but surely create new coping skills and new ways to process, and you can become more insightful and aware so that the growth can happen on the other side of this shift.
Exactly, exactly. And at some point in the process of focusing, now shifting your focus on how was I impacted instead of what happened, I start to some some things start to develop a deeper meaning of life. I start to look at life in a different way of like, wow, I hate that this situation happened. I hate that I lost my significant other, and I've gone through this traumatic financial situation. But post this traumatic situation, like, wow, I'm able to look at and see, like, man, I can flex some muscle right now. And not only am I like flexing my muscle, I see how it made me improve in a whole lot of areas. I've had some clients that have experienced a death of their significant other, and over the years they were impacted. However, now it forced them to become independent. Like, this sucks. Like, man, I've never had to pay bills before, or I've never had to, the responsibility of the kids were never on me. He or she always did this. And from this beautiful relationship with financial literacy has emerged. Your kids, the relationship has improved, and not that you were like thankful that you lost this person,
Right.
but you have become this super parent or this financial guru. What was her name? We were talking about her earlier. She went through something
Centoya
traumatic.
Brown.
Centoria, oh my God,
Centoya Brown.
Centoria Brown. Her story, like, man, just really, because I have a daughter, and I was like, wow, this could have been my daughter. But
Mm-hmm.
now from this, ashes has emerged a phoenix. She is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, and we have a new light that is being a brighter light, I should say, that's being shined on sex trafficking.
Yes.
And I'm pretty certain she didn't think that at 12, 13, 14, what she was going through, she was going to turn into this powerful person with a powerful voice.
That's so true. We just got to get to the other side. And getting to the other side can be uncomfortable, right? I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
this girl was in prison. Think about all the uncomfortable
yeah,
moments that she must have had, right?
yeah,
But on the other side of that, you know, making a decision, I want this. I want to grow from this thing. You know, what was meant to destroy me, I am going to use it to grow, to be better, to come
Yeah.
out of this thing different.
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of it that a lot of people miss. We go to church and we'll pray about it, and hey, we're gonna leave it at the altar, and then you walk away with this grief. You walk away with nothing um, to do about it. And so this one question, how was I impacted, starts to force you into the okay. So what you gonna do about it now? I'm
Right.
aware now of what happened. And now I'm aware of how I've been responding to life in these other ways. So, what now can I do about it to shift? If you never get into the action mode of it, man, it's like going, excuse this example, Vic, but it's like looking in the mirror and you see a booger in your nose and you just like, you blow and don't do anything. You walk away with the booger still in your nose. What type of foolishness is that? But people
Right.
do it every day.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like when you know better, you got to do better. Right. And I'm guessing if you are sitting down with your therapist week after week, you're learning
Mm-hmm.
different ways to handle this stuff, right? You have somebody that's in your corner, but also calling you out. All right, Tim, this has been great, man.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lifelong journey, and I hope that most people, all of us, have endured something. And I'm hoping that whether you're seeing a therapist or not, that you can begin to ask yourself, maybe you were not raped, or you didn't go to jail, or you didn't lose a loved one or a job, but we've all endured some type of traumatic situation.
Yes.
If you can begin to ask yourself this one question and really inventory, how was I impacted? You'll start to shift the narrative in your life. And from that, hopefully you'll get to a place where you start to do something and receive lift in that area of trauma.
My name is Tim Terry. I've been a licensed therapist for the last 5 years.
My name is Jada Hill, and I'm a licensed counselor who's been practicing for the past 5 years with a focus on cultural identity issues.
Hi, I'm Victoria Traylor. I am a licensed therapist. I've been practicing for over 10 years with a focus on trauma and anxiety.
This podcast is intended not to replace a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.